The millionaire noticed as Black Maid stayed calm as robberies took over. Her actions shocked the world. The mansion was silent, too silent. The kind of silence that makes your heart beat, so loud it feels like the whole world can hear it. Then, the crash of shattering glass tore through the night. Footsteps thundered in the hallway. Shouts, chaos, the sound of drawers being ripped open. Silver clattering onto marble floors. And in the middle of it all stood her, the maid, a black woman, frozen in the dim light, but not trembling, not screaming. Her eyes were steady, her breath controlled, her hands folded tightly in front of her apron. Calm, almost impossibly calm. The millionaire who employed her hid in the shadows, his breath ragged, watching with disbelief. How could she remain so composed when the world around them was being ripped apart? What no one knew was that her calm wasn't born out of ignorance or courage alone. It was born out of something deeper, something the world had taught her again and again. What would you do if fear wasn't new to you, if it had been stitched into your very existence? Because this story isn't just about robbery. It's about survival, injustice, and a choice that shocked the world. If this unsettles you, don't look away. Share it. Talk about it. Because silence only feeds a cycle. Before that night of shattered glass and chaos, before the world would know her name, she was simply Clara. Clara was a woman whose life had never belonged entirely to her. Each morning before dawn, she rose in a small rented room she called home. The walls were thin, painted a pale yellow that had long faded to the color of old bones. Outside, the street was alive with its own rhythm. Vendors calling out their early wares, the hiss of frying oil from the corner stall, children chasing each other barefoot through puddles left from last night's rain. Clara walked through it all, her apron neatly folded in her bag, her step steady, her face unreadable. The bus ride to the mansion was long, an hour of swaying back and forth, surrounded by tired workers just like her. The seats smelled faintly of sweat and diesel, but to Clara, it was simply the passage between two worlds. Because by the time she arrived at the gates of the Whitmore estate, she had to become someone else entirely. The mansion stood tall, with its gleaming white pillars and manicured lawns, a world away from the cracked sidewalks of Clara's neighborhood. The air smelled different here. Freshly cut grass, lavender hedges, the faint salt of the nearby ocean breeze. And Clara fit herself into that world like a shadow. She cleaned floors until they gleamed, polished silver until she could see her own tired reflection, ironed suits so crisp they whispered when they moved. She was invisible, and yet she noticed everything. The millionaire, Mr. Whitmore, rarely saw her beyond the role she played. To him, she was a steady pair of hands that kept his household running, the quiet presence in the background of his parties, the soft footsteps in the hallways that ensured his life of luxury remained undisturbed. He thanked her politely, sometimes even smiled, but never once asked what dreams she carried or what burdens weighed on her heart. And Clara had dreams. Once, as a young girl, she wanted to teach. She loved books, the way stories could lift her out of poverty, carrying her somewhere brighter. But life had a way of narrowing paths for women like her, especially black women. One rejection here, one not enough there, and soon she found herself cleaning other people's homes instead of building her own future. She carried herself with quiet dignity, but beneath it, she endured the whispers, the subtle reminders of where society thought she belonged. The way store clerks watched her longer than others. The way party guests sometimes asked her if she really worked there, as though her very presence required justification. Still, she endured, for her mother, who depended on her wages, for her younger brother, still in school, for the hope, fragile as glass, that maybe one day her life would expand beyond dusting chandeliers and folding napkins into perfect swans. The mansion became both her stage and her prison. Each room she entered smelled of polish and money. Leather chairs, expensive perfume, cigars smoked late into the night. She moved quietly through these spaces, her hands steady, her face serene, even when her heart ached with exhaustion. And yet, there was something unshakable about her. A steel hidden beneath the softness. A calm that seemed almost unnatural to those who noticed. Clara had learned, through years of hardship, that panic never saved you. Calm did. Silence did. Endurance did. So when the first hints of unease crept into the city, news of robberies in wealthy neighborhoods, whispers among staff about masked men targeting homes like the Whitmores, Clara did not tremble. She simply listened. She prepared quietly. She noticed the way the security guards grew more nervous, the way the millionaire dismissed their fears with a wave of his hand, believing his wealth could insulate him from danger. But Clara knew better. She had seen too much of the world to think money built walls high enough to keep fear out. And so, on the night when the glass would shatter and chaos would spill into the marble halls of the mansion, Clara's calm was not accidental. It was a calm of someone who had been preparing for storms her entire life. Because for Clara, survival wasn't reaction. It was a habit. The mansion glittered in daylight, but underneath its shine, unease was spreading like a slow fire. It started with whispers. Another house in the neighborhood broken into. A wealthy couple tied up in their own dining room, while masked men raided their safe. Staff in the Whitmore household traded nervous glances, murmuring in kitchens and laundry rooms. Clara overheard every word, folding napkins while the cook's voice trembled about a robbery just 2 streets away. Mr. Whitmore, however, dismissed it all. They target people who flaunt their wealth, he said, sipping his bourbon. We have security. We're untouchable. But Clara knew better. She could feel it in the air, like the humidity before a storm, heavy and pressing against the skin. At night, she lay awake in her small room, hearing every creak of the mansion's frame. Her mind replayed the robberies she'd read about in the papers. The broken windows, the muffled screams, the way ordinary nights were transformed into nightmares. But fear did not consume her. Instead, it sharpened her, tightening her resolve like a drawn bowstring. Because Clara understood something Mr. Whitmore never could. Money built walls, yes, but those walls were fragile when tested by desperation. And desperation was spreading fast. The first escalation came quietly. One morning, Clara noticed muddy footprints near the side gate. The guards dismissed it, saying it was probably delivery men. But Clara watched the print closely. Too wide, too deep. Whoever had stood there had waited. She mentioned it to Mr. Whitmore in passing, gently. He chuckled, waved it off. Clara, you worry too much. That's not your job. But it was her job, or at least it felt that way. She was the one who kept the house running, the one who noticed the details no one else cared to see. And if danger was circling the estate, she would not look away. The days dragged on. The tension thickened. The once bright, airy halls of the mansion seemed darker, shadows stretching longer across the marble. Clara carried trays with steady hands, but her eyes flickered every window. Every door left ajar. Then came the point of no return. It was a Friday night, and the Whitmores were hosting a dinner party. Laughter echoed to the grand hall. Glasses clinked. Violins played softly in the background. Guests in glittering gowns and sharp suits filled their plates with delicacies Clara had arranged. But outside, beyond the circle of light spilling from the windows, figures waited. Clara saw it first. While clearing a tray, she caught sight of movement through the tall glass doors leading to the garden. A flicker of black against the hedge. A reflection of something metallic. Maybe a weapon. Her heart thudded once, hard. She glanced around. No one else noticed. The guards had been reassigned to the front entrance to greet guests. The back garden, wide and unguarded, was exposed. Clara's mind raced. She could shout. She could interrupt the party, demand they lock the doors. But she knew how it would sound. A maid panicking in the middle of a lavish dinner. They'd dismiss her, embarrass her, perhaps even punish her later. So she stayed calm. She collected another tray. She walked steadily, deliberately, toward the back door. Her eyes never wavered. And then, in a swift motion only she seemed to notice, the back gate creaked open. Figures slipped inside, masked, dark-clothed, moving like shadows. Clara's stomach tightened. This was it. The fear everyone whispered about had finally arrived. The chaos unfolded faster than Anya 10 cinematic scene inside a luxurious mansion dining hall. A black maid standing calm and composed in the center, while masked robbers smashed glass doors in the background. White millionaire crouched in fear behind a chair. Dramatic lighting with sharp contrasts of chaos versus calm. Bold text overlay at the top. Her calm shocked the world, high resolution, ultra detailed, YouTube thumbnail style. A tense cinematic scene inside a luxurious mansion dining hall. A black maid standing calm and composed in the center, while masked robbers smash glass doors in the background. White millionaire crouched in fear behind a chair. Dramatic lighting with sharp contrast of chaos versus calm. Bold text overlay at the top. Her calm shocked the world. High resolution, ultra detailed, YouTube thumbnail style. One could comprehend. The glass door shattered inward with a single violent blow. Guests screamed. Wine spilled like blood across the white tablecloths. The violin screeched to a halt as masked men stormed in, shouting for everyone to stay down. Mr. Whitmore froze, his face pale, his body trembling as he ducked behind his chair. The guests shrieked, their glittering jewels catching the dim light as they scrambled for safety. And Clara stood still. She did not flinch when the first robber slammed a gun against the table. She did not scream when another yanked necklaces off the women, watches off the men. Her breath was even, her eyes steady. The robbers noticed her. One barked, "You, get down." But Clara didn't move right away. She lowered herself slowly, carefully, her hands raised. Calm, controlled. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was soft but clear. "Take what you came for, but don't hurt anyone." The room went silent for a beat. Even the guests stared at her. A maid speaking with that kind of composure, in the middle of armed chaos. It was unthinkable. The lead robber tilted his head, almost curious. For a moment, it was as though the gun wasn't pointed at anyone, as though her calmness unsettled him more than panic ever could. And in that moment, Clara became something more than invisible staff. She was the anchor in a room drowning in fear. But the calm was not without cost. Inside, her heart pounded. Her palms were slick with sweat pressed against a marble floor. Every nerve screamed at her to run, to fight, to hide. But Clara had lived through too much, seen too much, to give fear that satisfaction. Her composure wasn't just bravery. It was survival, carved into her bones by years of enduring a world that dismissed her voice, her pain, her very presence. This night, though, the world would not be able to ignore her, because the choices she made in those next few minutes, the way she carried herself, the words she spoke, would ripple far beyond the walls of the Whitmore mansion. The storm had arrived, and Clara was standing at its center, unbroken. The room was chaos. Screams ricocheted off marble walls. Silver platters clattered to the ground, scattering food across the polished floor. A crystal chandelier trembled above, every shard of glass vibrating with the echo of terror. The robbers barked orders, their voices sharp and jagged like broken glass. "Down! All of you, down!" One of them fired a shot into the ceiling. The blast was deafening. Smoke curled into the air. Guests shrieked and pressed themselves flat against the ground, their glittering gowns and sharp suits now smeared with spilled wine and fear. Mr. Whitmore lay crouched behind a chair, his face pale, his body shaking. His wealth, his power, his confidence, none of it mattered now. He was just another frightened man in a room held hostage. And in the middle of it all, Clara, her body was still, her eyes, sharp and unyielding, fixed on the robbers. She moved like a chess player, each breath deliberate, each gesture controlled. While others quaked, she steadied herself. One of the men stormed toward her, gun in hand. He pointed it directly at her forehead. The barrel was so close she could see the tiny scratches etched into its steel. She could smell the bitter tang of gunpowder clinging to the weapon. Her heart thundered. But her face remained calm. The robber snarled, "You think you're brave? You think standing there makes you special?" Her voice was low, steady. "I think fear makes mistakes, and mistakes cost lives." For a heartbeat, silence swallowed the room. Even the guests froze, eyes darting between the gun and the woman who dared to speak. The robber's hand trembled, not much, but just enough. Clara saw it. She leaned into the silence, her words cutting through the tension like a knife. "You want money? Jewelry? Take it, but you don't need blood on your hands. Walk out alive." The leader of the group barked from across the room, "Stop wasting time. Empty the safe." The gunman hesitated, his breath ragged, his grip loosening slightly. Clara's calm was unnerving him. Panic, he could understand. Pleading, he expected. But this unflinching presence threw him off balance. Behind her, Mr. Whitmore's eyes widened. For the first time, he truly saw her, not as a maid who polished the silver, but as a woman standing between life and death with a courage he himself did not possess. But courage has a cost. The second robber lunged forward, grabbing Clara's arm roughly, yanking her toward the center of the room. "She thinks she's in charge," he spat, pressing the gun against her temple. The cold metal burned into her skin. Gasps erupted from the crowd. For the first time, Clara's breath caught. The taste of fear coated her tongue, metallic and sharp, like blood. Her pulse roared in her ears. For a moment, the calm threatened to break. And then she remembered the time she'd been followed in stores, accused of stealing. The whispers at parties. She doesn't belong here. The bus rides where strangers clutched their bags tighter when she sat down. The years of being overlooked, undervalued, unseen. Fear had been her companion her entire life, but it had never destroyed her. She closed her eyes for half a second, inhaled deeply and steadied herself. When she opened them again, her voice was quiet but firm. "You don't have to do this. I'm not afraid of you." The robber froze. A tremor rippled through his hand. The room held its breath. And then, from somewhere in the mansion, a sharp sound, sirens wailing in the distance. Police closing in. The robbers cursed, panicked, their control unraveling. The leader shouted orders, frantic now. "We're out of time. Grab what you can, let's go." In the scramble, Clara was shoved to the floor. Her palms slapped against the cold marble, pain shooting up her wrists. The chandelier above shook violently as boots thundered past her. The men snatched what they could, jewels, watches, wallets, and fled into the night, the sound of their footsteps swallowed by sirens. And then silence. The mansion lay wrecked. Shards of glass glittered on the floor like spilled stars. Guests sobbed quietly, clutching each other. Mr. Whitmore emerged slowly from his hiding place, his eyes darting to Clara, who was pushing herself to her feet, her apron streaked with dust and blood where her skin had scraped against the floor. He looked at her, not as staff, not as background, but as the reason the night hadn't ended in bloodshed. Clara stood tall, shoulders squared, breath steady despite the storm that had just passed. Inside, her body trembled. Her legs threatened to give way. But outwardly, she was unbroken. The breaking point had come and gone, and she had not shattered. When the last siren faded into the night, the mansion felt like a different place. Its walls, once pristine, bore the marks of violence. Shattered glass glittered like ice across the floor. Overturned chairs stood as monuments to chaos, and the air itself seemed heavy, thick with the residue of fear. But in the middle of the ruins stood Clara. Her apron was torn, her hands raw, her breath still uneven. Yet there was something unshakable about her presence. The millionaire guests, still trembling, began to whisper, first about the robbery, and then about her. She didn't panic. She told them not to shoot. She saved us. Mr. Whitmore heard it all. For years, Clara had been invisible to him, a moving shadow in his grand home, her worth measured only in the shine of his silverware and the crispness of his suits. But now, he saw her in a way that unsettled him. He saw her strength, her composure, her defiance in the face of death. And he saw something else, the shameful truth of his own fear. The next morning, news outlets swarmed the mansion gates. Headlines spread like wildfire. Black Maid saves millionaire and guests during armed robbery. Cameras captured Clara's calm face, though she avoided them as best she could. She hadn't acted for recognition. She hadn't acted to be called a hero. She had acted because she knew what fear did to people, and she refused to let it consume her. Yet the world seized on her story. Some praised her courage. Others, in the quiet corners of society, twisted it. Online comments whispered the same old prejudice. She got lucky. Why was she so calm? Was she in on it? Even in her moment of triumph, suspicion clung to her skin, the kind only racism knows how to breed. Clara felt the weight of it all. In the days that followed, she moved through her routines with the same quiet dignity, but her nights were restless. She replayed the robbery over and over, the glint of the gun, the trembling hands, the sirens in the distance. She wondered if she had truly made a difference, or if she had simply survived yet another test the world forced upon her. Mr. Whitmore, however, could not forget. He called her into his study, his voice uncharacteristically heavy. He thanked her, awkwardly, clumsily, but the words felt small compared to what she had done. He offered her money, gifts, security. Clara listened politely, then shook her head. "I don't need your rewards," she said quietly. "I need you to see me. Not just today. Always." Her words struck him harder than any robber's gun could have, because in them lay a truth far deeper than a single night's violence. The real robbery had been happening for years. The theft of dignity, the erasure of humanity, the silence of a woman forced to endure invisibility until her calm in chaos made the world finally look. Clara's story spread beyond the mansion, beyond the city. Activists held up her courage as an example of resilience. Communities whispered her name as proof that strength is not born from privilege, but from survival. Her face became a symbol, but symbols can be heavy burdens to carry. Clara remained the same woman she had always been. She still woke before dawn. She still carried her apron neatly folded. She still cared for her family with quiet devotion. But something had shifted. The world had seen her. And more importantly, she had reminded herself that her strength had always been hers, long before the cameras, long before the headlines. The mansion was eventually repaired. The shattered glass swept away. The tables reset. The chandeliers polished to shine once more. From the outside, it looked untouched, as though nothing had happened. But those who were there would never forget, because while the robbers stole jewels and wallets, Clara revealed something greater. That fear does not define us. Dignity cannot be erased, and calm in the storm can change everything. So ask yourself, what do you see when you look at Clara? A maid? A survivor? A hero? Or the reflection of society that only notices certain lives when they're tested by fire? This story isn't just hers. It's ours. If it unsettled you, don't let it end here. Share it. Talk about it. Because awareness is the first step to change.